more talented quarterback, but I really think that this is one of those aspects where they did a good job, the Browns front office, in picking the guy that fits them. It took a guy with the swagger, I think, of Baker to come in there and to be with that football team. That's one of the things that the Browns lacked over the past however many years is a swagger. And I think Baker was right for that job. At the end of the day, 10 years from now, we may talk about that Sam Darnold was the more talented guy, but I think Baker was the right guy for Cleveland because I think we all question that pick. What the hell are you guys doing, especially after the debacle of Johnny Manziel? But I really think they really, put a lot of time into finding their guy, and I think they really have. They found their guy.
Well, guys, let's talk a little bit more about some of these other teams around the NFL while we got just a few minutes left, if you will. And as I mentioned earlier on in the show, erroneously, I said that Sam Bradford parted the Red Seas with his staff, but really it was Baker Mayfield. But that said, Sam Bradford is with Arizona, where quarterbacks go to be put out to pasture, and he is not parting the Red Sea in Arizona. There's some serious struggles right now with Arizona and questions about Sam Bradford at the helm, Ed.
Yeah, and yet there are teams still willing to pay him millions and millions of dollars to go out and throw for 90 yards in a football game. I just don't get it. You look around the league here, you see the success Mayfield's had in his debut, and, Darnold's doing okay. He's not really lighting it up yet, but he shows some ability and some things you can be happy with. And, I just think if you're looking at that and you're the GM in Arizona, why not go with Josh Rosen? Why not put him in there? Can he do any worse than what Bradford's doing? Let's get the future started right now. And, I think there's a ticking clock on Bradford. I'm not sure why he's even going to start Sunday. I guess he is. I haven't seen anything that says he won't. But, you really have to wonder how much longer he's going to be the starter there.
Mo, don't you think it's time for the Josh Rosen era to begin in Arizona?
Yeah, for sure, because if you look at, and the funny thing about it is that you look at Sam Bradford, he's the last guy that got that humongous guaranteed paycheck as the first number one overall pick where, you're a team back then, you screw up at that pick, you really damage your franchise for years. And now, you see a lot of teams when they draft that quarterback early try to do the Seattle Seahawks, game plan where you've got, a 4-year window to have a quarterback who isn't, costing you a fortune like he will on a second contract and build up those other positions. So if I'm in Arizona now, there's no way Sam Bradford sees the field again. I'm trying to get Josh Rosen ready and trying to build that team up around him while I still have him on a reasonable deal. So, yeah, I don't get starting Sam Bradford again. Arizona's looked terrible. At times last week even worse than the Bills did. So, it's Josh Rosen time in Arizona for me.
Could you look worse than the Bills? The Bills got the Vikings this week. Obviously, the Vikings, fantastic job against the Green Bay. I made a stupid decision in fantasy football to in one of my leagues to set Aaron Rodgers and play Alex Smith. Big mistake on my part, but yet we saw another game end in a tie, Ed. But the Bills and the Vikings tomorrow, we'll try to get through some of these games as quick as possible. I like the Vikings. I don't think there's much really to talk about on this game.
Nope. The Vikings, I think, are going to be without Dalvin Cook, the running back, and Everson Griffin, the real good pass rusher. But I don't think it'll matter. Bills aren't good at all. Vikings should breeze in this one.
Mo, let's talk a little bit about the Giants and the Texans. The Texans are the real deal, and unfortunately, they are in the AFC South. But we do like the way the Colts are looking. If the Colts can pull off a win tomorrow against Philadelphia and go on a winning streak of 2, I think that certainly nobody thought that they could would win against the Redskins. I don't think anybody thinks that they'll win against the Eagles. And I love you, Ed, but I'm really rooting hard for the Colts. But the Texans and the Giants, Mo, I tell you what, I don't like the Texans. I like the Giants in this matchup.
Well, what scares me is that this could be I feel like Eli Manning's walking the green mile right now, because if you look the way this offensive line's played the last few weeks, especially last week in Dallas, and you look at that defense of the Houston Texans, it scares me that Eli won't be living after this football game. I like what the Giants have on paper. a lot better than I do what the Texans have. But between Eli not having time to do anything with the football, and I think you noticed last week a couple different times on a couple different plays that Eli, instead of looking downfield, was watching the pass rush, because he was hit so many times that I think he started diverting, watching the pass rush more than looking downfield for receivers. And I think when a quarterback does that, he looked very David Carrish of me in that situation last week. I can't see the Giants going 0-3. Houston struggled a little bit on offense. I have the Giants. I've bet the Giants just because I'm getting points. But, to me, it's probably a Houston win, but I put money on the Giants because I'm getting points. But I worry for the safety of the Eli Manning tomorrow.
And let's talk a little bit about, my two fantasy quarterbacks in one of my leagues, Alex Smith and Aaron Rodgers. Both kind of a beat-up team, if you will. I guess Rodgers is going to start. Alex Smith is going to start. Who do I start? Well, I guess I'm going to start Aaron Rodgers. But the Packers make a visit to D.C., and if the Redskins play like they did against the Colts, the Packers are looking at another win.
Yeah, this is a big game for Washington. Obviously, this is the second home game in a row, and they've already lost one of them. You're not going to make the playoffs if you don't defend your home turf, and it's a huge game for Washington to make a statement. I just don't think they're the better team, and I think Green Bay is going to come out and they're going to find a way to win this game. And I'm not sure how good the Redskins are at this point. They beat the Cardinals in the opener, but we've all determined how bad the Cardinals are. So to me, Washington doesn't have the roster that can stack up to Green Bay's, and I certainly give the edge at quarterback to Aaron Rodgers. I just think Green Bay is going to hand Washington their second home loss of the season already.
Mo, we talk a little bit about the Kansas City Chiefs. Another one of my fantasy quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes. Very, very impressed with them. Although, watching the Chiefs, they don't have a rushing game. They've got a lot of issues on the field. But I think they'll do just fine against the 49ers. And maybe the 49ers are starting to second-guess their $100 million MILF-toting quarterback.
Well, at this point, I don't think the 49ers would question it at this point, because I think Jimmy Garoppolo does have talent, and I think when you had fallen on hard times like San Francisco had, you needed a guy who's a face of the franchise, who the fans will get behind. So I think a lot of times fans, sometimes you look too much into money like that, but, they were a team that needed a face, and they've got one. As far as Kansas City goes, I don't think anybody could predict the start of Patrick Mahomes. But one thing that concerns me is this team reminds me a lot of the 2006 Colts team that won the Super Bowl, because the defense has struggled, and it feels like Patrick Mahomes and that offense is going to have to go out and put up 30 or 40 points a game, just because that defense has struggled the last couple of games. They were up big and let Pittsburgh get back in the game, but the offense for the Chiefs is dynamic, and it's fun to watch.
And the future Las Vegas Raiders take on the current Miami Dolphins, and the Miami Dolphins look like they're ready to handle the NFL this year, and I think that they definitely can handle a Raiders team who is not focused on 2018 at all.
Yeah, well, the Raiders came close last week to winning, but couldn't quite pull it off, and you're right. The Dolphins certainly have started well from the start here. They're 2-0, and I just don't know if they're for real yet or if they're a pretender. But to me, they're 2-0. You are what your record says you are, and Oakland's 0-2. So yeah, I would expect Miami at home to beat the Raiders. It's funny to keep hearing John Gruden talk about how it's hard to find pass rushers when he just let Khalil Mack go, and I talked about it last week. I just think it's hard to square in that locker room that they let their best player and a very good person just walk out the door and go to Chicago. And, players can say, oh, well, we're over it now. But listen, that's a tough kick in the stomach to take when your best player isn't with you anymore. So I like Miami to win this game.
Mo, you weren't on the conversation with Ed and I earlier about the Colts and the Eagles, but certainly want to get your thoughts on the Colts and the Eagles. I like the Colts going to be a close game. I think that as I mentioned to Ed earlier, this is a very winnable game for the Colts because of the injury list with the Eagles. Certainly impressed with the upward momentum with the Colts from last week's win. The Colts and the Eagles, Mo.
With the Colts, you've had a few guys on defense have been pleasant surprises, especially, at linebacker. What hurts the Colts in this football game is that there is no Marlon Mack, there is no Jack Doyle. I think that's going to be tough for Andrew Luck. This defense has got to continue its bend, don't break type play. For the Eagles, missing Darren Sproles and J.J. I think is big. With Carson Wentz coming back. And to me, I think that's the key to the game is how comfortable is he going to feel in real live game action out there. Can the Colts make him uncomfortable and force him to make some mistakes? Because, regardless, when you have an injury like that, I would have to assume, not having played quarterback and come back from an injury like that, but I have to assume that that's in your mind at some point coming back from a catastrophic injury like that. I assumed it was in Andrew Luck's mind when he played his first preseason game coming back. So I think the Colts' main focus is to try to make Carson Wentz uncomfortable. The load will be on Corey Clement to handle the rushing load, and so it'll be interesting to see. I do like the Eagles on defense against this Colts offense, but I think the onus is on the Colts defense in this game, not the offense, to make Wentz uncomfortable.
Ed, we got one more game that I wanted to cover. I know we're not going to be able to get to all the games, but certainly a big AFC South matchup, the Titans and the Jaguars. Jaguars are the real deal, and they certainly demand respect and are getting respect finally, you could say, in the AFC South especially. But the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Titans, I know there was a lot of singing about the Titans being a Super Bowl favorite or a AFC Championship game favorite, but right now you got to go with the Jaguars in this matchup.
Well, absolutely. Especially if Marcus Mariota doesn't play, I think he's going to be a game time decision for the Titans, but Jacksonville's going to be probably without Fournette and maybe Jalen Ramsey too. But you're right. The Jags are for real. They were for real last year. They should have been in the Super Bowl against the Eagles had they just stayed a little bit more aggressive in that AFC title game against the Patriots. So, they've got that feeling of some unfinished business, and right now they seem to be on a mission. And boy, that defense is just so good. And if Mariota's not there, they would struggle with Mariota at quarterback. I think the Titans would against this defense. But then whoever the backup is to put him out there against this defense just doesn't feel like a fair fight. So, I do like the Jags to win this game.
Mo, the bearded man with the pencil in his ear, meets his old teammates, the Patriots. The Lions are playing like crap, and the Patriots are playing Patriot football. No one likes the Patriots, but, man, if you're a Lions fan, you got to be very disappointed with Matt Patricia. What are your thoughts on him meeting his old team, the New England Patriots?
I think at times that the coaches get too much credit, too much blame. But so far, what I've seen with the Lions, I think a lot of it does fall to Matt Patricia because game one on that Monday night they looked terrible. They didn't look prepared, and I think that there are a lot of issues with him and that coaching staff, and I think that things continue to get worse for that team. Obviously, you would assume that Bill Belichick always wants to show that I'm still the man, the teacher still rules the student. Even regardless of what the relationship is like with him and Matt Patricia, I'm sure he's happy that another one of his guys got a head coaching job. But I think that he's going to look to pour it on his former defensive coordinator and the Detroit Lions.
Ed, final game, Monday night. The Steelers not looking good at all, and the Buccaneers looking very good. And Carson Wentz is not Carson Wentz. Got him on my mind. The Tampa Bay quarterback, I think, is Jameson Winston. That was in my mind. I'm so sorry. See, dude, I'm flowing. I'm flowing. I can't get Carson Wentz off my mind. reason. Jameson Winston, you can see how they sound alike. Jameson Winston will not be back as the quarterback for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Steelers, man, they got some Days of Our Life drama going on.
Yeah, well, two things there. Fitzmagic, Ryan Fitzpatrick's, had a rebirth down there. He's got some great weapons to throw to. With Deshaun Jackson, who had a great game against the Eagles. But Jackson's always motivated to play the Eagles,